The Valorian High Command received the transmission at exactly 0347 Standard Galactic Time. Fleet Admiral Korath stood before the massive display screen, his four eyes blinking in sequence as the data streamed across his vision. 12 human vessels had been detected at the edge of the Nexus corridor. They were small ships, barely armed, moving in standard patrol formation. Scout-class vessels, his tactical officer announced. Minimal shielding, light weapons. They appear to be conducting routine surveillance of our border territories. Korath's mandibles clicked together in what passed for amusement among his species. The humans had been expanding into this sector for nearly 3 cycles now. They were a young species, barely 1,000 years into space travel. The Valorian Dominion had conquered galaxies, while humanity was still learning to make fire. These creatures with their soft bodies and single hearts had somehow convinced themselves they belonged among the stars. "Deploy Task Force 7, Korath ordered. "Destroy the scout vessels and send a message to their leaders. The Nexus corridor belongs to the Dominion." 72 warships broke formation from the main fleet. Each vessel was 3 times the size of the human scouts. Their weapons could crack planetary crusts. Their shields could withstand the heat of dying stars. Task Force 7 represented just a fraction of the Dominion's military power, but it would be more than enough to eliminate a handful of human explorers. Commander Elise Chun sat in the captain's chair of the scout vessel Wanderer. Her crew of 37 worked quietly at their stations, collecting data and monitoring sensor readings. They had been assigned to map the gravitational anomalies near the Valorian border, a routine mission that should have taken 6 weeks. "Commander," her sensor officer called out, "we have multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. Valorian military signatures. 72 vessels and counting." Chung remained calm. She had expected something like this. The Valorians had been growing increasingly aggressive over the past year. They viewed humanity as nothing more than pests to be exterminated. What they failed to understand was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since first contact. "Signal the fleet," she said quietly. "Totomiga, tell them we have engagement." The communication officer's hands moved across her console. A single burst transmission shot through subspace, carrying nothing but a series of numbers. To anyone intercepting it, the message would appear meaningless. But somewhere in the void, those numbers would trigger something the Valorians could not imagine. Task Force 7 surrounded the human scouts within minutes. The Valorian ships formed a perfect sphere, cutting off all possible escape routes. On the bridge of his command vessel, Fleet Commander Voss watched the tiny human ships with contempt. They had made no attempt to flee. They simply held their positions, almost as if they were waiting for something. "Open a communication channel," Voss ordered. "I want to see the fear in their eyes before we destroy them." The human commander appeared on screen. She was a female of the species, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. Voss had studied human expressions during his training. He expected to see terror. Instead, he saw something that looked almost like pity. "Valorian vessel," the human said. "This is Commander Elise Chun of the Earth Alliance. You are engaging vessels protected by the Soul Accords. I advise you to withdraw immediately." Voss laughed. The sound came out as a series of harsh clicks. "Your treaties mean nothing to us. You have entered Dominion space. The punishment for this crime is death." "We entered neutral space," Chun replied. "But that hardly matters now. You've made your choice. I just wanted you to know that you had the option to walk away." The transmission ended. Voss gave the order to fire. 72 Valorian warships opened up with everything they had. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and graviton torpedoes streaked toward the 12 human scouts. The space around the human vessels became a storm of destructive energy. Any ships in that kill zone should have been vaporized instantly. But the human ships were no longer there. They had moved at the last possible moment, accelerating at speeds that should have been impossible. Their engines flared with a strange blue light that Valorian science could not explain. They wove between the incoming fire like insects avoiding a slow-moving hand. And then they were outside the formation, racing away at velocities that defied the laws of physics. "What happened?" Voss demanded. "How did they survive?" Before anyone could answer, something else appeared on the sensors. Something massive was emerging from hyperspace directly behind the Valorian formation. The tactical displays lit up with new contacts, and for the first time in his military career, Voss felt genuine fear. The Imperial fleet of Earth had arrived. Admiral Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Unconquered, watching the Valorian task force through the main view screen. His fleet consisted of 200 warships, each one designed for a single purpose. They were built for war against enemies who believed humanity would be easy prey. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "Valorian task force is attempting to reposition. They're turning to face us." "Let them," Stone replied. "Target their command vessel. Disable their communications. I don't want them calling for reinforcements until we're ready." The Unconquered's main weapon charged with a low hum that could be felt throughout the ship. It was called a quantum lance, a weapon that could punch through any known shielding technology. The Valorians had never seen anything like it. They had assumed that humanity's small scout ships represented the peak of human engineering. They were about to learn otherwise. The lance fired. A beam of compressed energy crossed the void in less than a heartbeat. It struck the Valorian command vessel's shield and passed through as if the barrier did not exist. The beam carved through the hull, destroying the communication arrays and crippling the ship's primary systems. Fleet Commander Voss watched in horror as his ship went dark around him. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in a red glow. His tactical displays were offline. His weapons were disabled. His ship was helpless. "All vessels," he shouted through the emergency communication system. "Attack formation. We must." But his fleet was already dying. The human ships moved with terrible precision. They fought like nothing the Valorians had ever encountered. Their weapons punched through shields that should have been impenetrable. Their own shields absorbed hits that would have destroyed lesser vessels, and their speed made them almost impossible to target. Captain Sarah Drake commanded the destroyer Relentless. Her ship cut through the Valorian formation like a blade through flesh. She watched 3 enemy cruisers explode in rapid succession, their crews never knowing what hit them. The battle was not a contest. It was an execution. "Captain," her weapons officer called out. "Enemy vessels attempting to retreat to hyperspace. Activate the gravity well generators," Drake ordered. "Nobody leaves until we're finished." Across the battlefield, human ships deployed a new technology. Space itself seemed to twist around the Valorian fleet. Their hyperspace engines sputtered and failed. They were trapped, unable to run, unable to call for help. And the human fleet was closing in from all sides. Admiral Stone watched the slaughter with cold satisfaction. Every destroyed Valorian ship was a message. Every dead enemy was a warning to the powers that believed humanity could be bullied, conquered, or exterminated. The humans had learned from their first contacts with hostile alien species. They had studied their enemies, analyzed their weaknesses, and built weapons specifically designed to exploit those flaws. "Admiral," his communication officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the Valorian High Command. They want to negotiate." Stone allowed himself a small smile. "Put them through." Fleet Admiral Korath's face appeared on the screen. The alien's 4 eyes were wide with shock. Behind him, Stone could see other Valorian officers rushing about in obvious panic. Korath's mandibles were shaking. "Human Admiral," Korath said, "your ships engaged our task force without provocation. This is an act of war. Your task force attacked our scouts first," Stone replied calmly. "Unprovoked aggression against vessels operating in neutral territory. Under our laws, that justifies a proportional response." "Proportional?" Korath's voice rose in pitch. "You destroyed 72 of our warships. Thousands of our warriors are dead, and yet not a single human life was lost. I call that proportional. Stone leaned forward. Now listen carefully, Fleet Admiral. We know about your main fleet. We know you have nearly 3,000 warships assembled at your core systems. We know you were planning an invasion of human space. Karth's eyes widened further. How could they possibly know? That information was classified at the highest levels. You thought you would strike our colonies before we could respond, Stone continued. You believe we were weak, primitive, easy prey. He paused. You were wrong. As if to emphasize his point, the tactical display behind him flickered to life. It showed not the current battle, but something else entirely. Something happening far away. It showed the Valorian core systems. It showed the Valorian main fleet. And it showed dozens of human vessels emerging from hyperspace in the very heart of Dominion territory. While your task force was busy chasing our scouts, Stone explained, our strike fleet jumped past your border defenses. Your main fleet is currently under attack. Your homeworld is within weapons range of our capital ships, and you have a choice to make. Karth felt his heart begin to race. This was impossible. No species in galactic history had ever moved so quickly. The humans should not have been capable of coordinating an attack across such vast distances. And yet the evidence was right there on his tactical feeds. What do you want? Karth asked, his voice barely a whisper. We want you to stand down, Stone replied. All Valorian military forces will power down their weapons and await further instructions. Any vessel that refuses will be destroyed. Any attempt to attack human territories now or in the future will result in the complete annihilation of your species. You would commit genocide? Stone shook his head. We would prefer not to. But we've learned that mercy is only meaningful when you have the power to destroy. Right now, we have that power. Make your choice. The transmission from Korath ended. For a long moment, there was silence on the bridge of the Unconquered. Then, one by one, the Valorian ships began powering down their weapons. Their shields dropped. Their engines went cold. They were surrendering. Commander Chun docked the Wanderer with the fleet flagship 3 hours later. She walked through the corridors of the massive warship, passing crews who nodded at her with respect. Her mission had been simple. Make contact with the enemy. Draw them into an attack. Survive long enough for the fleet to arrive. She found Admiral Stone in his ready room, staring at reports from the core system strike force. The Valorian main fleet had surrendered without firing a shot. Their leaders were requesting formal peace negotiations. The war that should have lasted years had ended in a single day. Commander, Stone greeted her. Your scouts performed admirably. Thank you, Admiral. Chun hesitated. May I ask a question? Go ahead. What happens now? The Valorians believed they were the dominant power in this sector. They spent centuries conquering other species. Their entire culture is built on the assumption that they are superior to everyone else. Stone was quiet for a moment. Then they'll have to learn a new way of thinking. Other species have learned to coexist peacefully. The Valorians will either adapt or they will fade into history. That's their choice to make. And if they choose war again, then we'll finish what we started today. Stone turned to look at her. We didn't build this fleet because we wanted to conquer anyone. We built it because the universe is full of species like the Valorians, species that see kindness as weakness, that view diplomacy as an opportunity for betrayal, that believe the only language worth speaking is violence. He walked to the viewport and gazed out at the stars. We learned their language. We became fluent in it. And now they understand that if they ever threaten our people again, we won't just defend ourselves. We'll take the fight directly to their homes, their fleets, their very heart. Chun nodded slowly. She understood. Humanity had not wanted this war. They had tried diplomacy first. They had offered trade and cultural exchange. They had extended every possible branch of peace. And when all of that failed, When the Valorians made it clear that only blood would satisfy them, humanity had responded with overwhelming force. The galaxy would remember this day, not as the start of human aggression, but as the moment when the younger species showed that they would not be pushed. They would not be conquered. They would not bow to empires that believed in domination over cooperation. And if any other civilization was thinking of testing humanity's resolve, they had just received a very clear answer. The scouts might seem weak. The outer colonies might appear vulnerable. But behind every human outpost stood the full might of a full might of a Fanehide. But behind every human outpost stood the full might of a Faust, stood the full might of a Faust, species that had fought its way up from the mud and the blood of a single world. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed them 100 times over. They had split the atom and walked on their moon and spread to the stars despite every obstacle the universe threw at them. They were humanity, and they would not be erased from existence without taking their enemies down with them. The Valorians had learned that lesson the hard way. Others would be wise to remember it. The stars stretched out before them, cold and ancient and indifferent. But humanity had never needed the universe to care about them. They had always made their own destiny. And today, that destiny had been written in fire across the Valorian sky.